Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of clean precision. It feels like engineering almost.
Right. It's very binary.
Exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at the screen and says, well, there it is. That's the problem.
Yeah. The bone is broken or it isn't, and the path to fixing it is usually pretty standardized from there.
But the moment you step out of a sterile clinic and into the world of, like, biological ecosystems, that x-ray machine just shatters. The diagnostic landscape gets incredibly murky.
Oh, absolutely. It's a completely different ballgame.
And we are diving into a perfect example of navigating that exact kind of murky diagnostic water today. And I have to say, our source material for this deep dive is hyper-specific.
It really is.
We are looking at a single, very short journal entry from the internet, dated August 14th, 2026. It's a blog post by an author named Ang.
Right.
And it's titled, Notes on Fishkeeping Part 317, Caring for an Injured Golden Gourami.
Which is funny because the text itself is barely, 150 words long?
It's tiny.
Yet it contains this complete narrative arc. You have observation, hypothesis testing, and triage all happening inside a miniature ecosystem.
It's wild how much is packed in there.
It really forces a close look at how to diagnose a patient that, can't tell you where it hurts inside an environment that is constantly changing.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because we are stepping into the middle of a very long story here. I mean, the title literally says Part 317.
Yeah, that's a huge clue right off the bat.
Right. We are not dealing with someone who just brought home a fish in a plastic bag from the local pet store and dumped it into a glass bowl.
No, not at all.
This implies an entire empire of ponds and tanks. Ang casually mentions this male golden gourami has been surviving in a specific outdoor pond out of the many they've obtained earlier.
And managing an outdoor pond is a complex balancing act. I mean, an experienced caretaker with over 300 journal entries understands the nitrogen cycle, the pH fluctuations, the microbacterial colonies.
All the stuff that keeps the water safe.
Exactly. And the existing male gourami had a designated territory in this specific pond. He had established his dominion, he knew where the food sources were, he knew the hiding spots.
So the ecosystem was at a steady, functional baseline.
Right. It was balanced.
But into that steady baseline drops the inciting incident, because Ang introduces a new golden gourami into this established pond.
And here's the kicker.
Yeah, Ang notes they assumed the newcomer was female, but also mentions this newcomer was significantly larger in size. And the fallout is immediate.
It's instantaneous.
Ang just dryly notes that the existing male and the newcomer did not get along well.
Which is such an understatement. The phrase "didn't get along well" drastically undersells the violence of territorial disputes among labyrinth fish.
Right, because they are notoriously aggressive, right?
Very. When a new variable is introduced into a closed, balanced system like that, the existing hierarchy collapses instantly.
Think about the psychology of this setup. From the fish's perspective for a second, you have this male fish, perfectly content in his bachelor pad pond.
He's got his routine.
Yeah, he has mapped every rock and every current. And suddenly, a giant stranger is dropped directly into his living room.
Without warning.
I compare the introduction of this larger, presumed female fish to setting up a high-stakes blind date. But it's like a blind date where one person suddenly moves all of their furniture into your tiny apartment without asking.
That is a stressful visual.
Right. You might expect romance, or at least a polite coexistence, but instead you get an absolute violation of space and boundaries. It just turns into an immediate turf war.
What's fascinating here is that single phrase, assumed was a female.
Yeah, that stood out to me too.
That is the hinge upon which this entire microdrama swings. We are talking about a highly experienced caretaker, and yet they made a visual assumption that completely destabilized an established system.
Because sexing certain species of gourami is notoriously difficult, isn't it?
It's incredibly tough. It often comes down to incredibly subtle physiological cues, like the shape and point of the dorsal fin or slight color variations.
Which can change, right?
Exactly. They can change based on the fish's stress levels or their diet. Ang looked at this larger fish, made a biological assumption based on those subtle visual cues, and just acted on it without a slow acclimation period.
And we've all done this, haven't we? I mean, for you listening, think about it. You drop a seemingly minor new element into your carefully balanced routine or a long-running project at work.
Oh, all the time.
Maybe it's a new software update you assume is perfectly compatible, or a new dynamic personality into a small team, assuming you know exactly how it will play out.
And instead, it throws absolutely everything into chaos.
Exactly. The pond operates as a microcosm for any closed system. The variables are highly sensitive, and confidence can easily mask a blind spot.
Yeah, the hubris of experience often leads us to bypass the strict quarantine or the slow introduction phases. We think we know the rules of the system we manage.
Because we've done it 316 times before.
Precisely. But biological systems, whether they're backyard ponds or, like you said, office dynamics, they don't care about our assumptions. The reality of the larger fish completely overwrote Aang's expectation of a peaceful mating pair.
And the consequences of that assumption didn't just end with a grumpy fish hiding behind a rock.
Far from it.
The territorial clash led to a severe physical crisis, which is what pushes the journal entry out of a behavioral observation and straight into a medical mystery.
This is where it gets intense.
Yeah, Aang reports that the male golden gourami is now suffering from a bent spine, which is severely affecting its ability to swim well.
Faced with a severely injured animal in an outdoor pond, Aang doesn't panic, though.
No, they get very analytical.
Right. The journal transitions into this compelling example of deductive reasoning. Aang immediately isolates 3 potential causes for a sudden skeletal deformity in a fish.
And those were bacterial infection, a broken spine, or a severe nutritional deficiency.
Right. Aang is essentially running a differential diagnosis, applying veterinary logic right there in a backyard setting.
They write, the first 2 are the most likely reasons, possibly due to infighting that led to an infection.
By leaning toward the bacterial infection or the broken spine, Aang is actively ruling out the severe nutritional deficiency, and that's based entirely on the timeline of events.
Because nutritional deficiencies take a long time, right?
Yeah, they operate on a long curve. A lack of vitamin C, for instance, can absolutely cause spinal deformities in fish.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, but that takes months of poor diet to manifest. This male gourami was surviving perfectly well, displaying normal morphology, until the larger newcomer was introduced.
So the sudden onset of the bent spine points directly to a trauma-related event.
Exactly. A broken spine is the most direct mechanical line. You know, the larger fish rammed the smaller one with enough force to physically fracture its skeletal structure.
Which makes sense.
But Aang also keeps the bacterial infection on the table as a primary suspect.
Okay, wait, I'm stuck here. Because I was reading this and thinking, a physical fight doesn't bend the spine unless the spine snaps on impact.
Right.
I can picture the physics of a bone breaking from a ramming attack. But how does bacteria bend a bone?
It sounds strange, I know.
It sounds like science fiction. An infection causing a skeletal curve just doesn't make intuitive sense to me.
Well, it makes a terrifying amount of biological sense when you look at the anatomy of a fish and the environment of an outdoor pond.
Okay, explain that.
An outdoor pond is teeming with naturally occurring bacteria. It is essentially a biological soup.
Gross, but okay.
And fish survive in that soup because they have a slime coat. It's a highly effective, mucus-based immune system worn on the outside of their scales.
Oh, right, like a physical and chemical barrier against parasites and bacteria.
Exactly. So what happens in a fight?
The fight creates a breach in that armor. The larger fish bites or aggressively scrapes the male, wiping away the slime coat and opening a physical wound on its flank.
Yes. The physical trauma from the larger fish doesn't break the spine directly, it just opens the door.
Oh, wow.
The bacteria in the pond water flood into that open wound. Now, look at how a fish moves. A fish's body is primarily composed of these immense bands of muscle on either side of the spine called myomeres.
Okay, the swimming muscles.
Right. These muscles contract in alternating waves to propel the fish forward. The spine is essentially a flexible rod held in perfect alignment by the equal tension of those muscles on the left and the right.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah.
If the bacteria enters through the wound and establishes an infection in the muscle tissue on one side of the fish,
You get severe localized inflammation. Or worse, necrosis, where the muscle tissue actually begins to die and seize up.
wow.
The muscle on the infected side of the fish's body contracts violently and permanently, while the healthy muscle on the other side remains relaxed.
It's like a bow and arrow.
That's a great way to picture it.
The spine is the wood of the bow, and the seizing infected muscle is the bowstring. The unequal muscle tension literally pulls the spine out of alignment, curving it sharply toward the infected side.
Bingo.
So the fight didn't actually bend the spine, The fight opened the wound, the bacteria infected the muscle spasmed, and the spasm bent the spine. It's just this cascading chain of causality.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are looking at a fundamental rule of pathology and systems failure.
How so?
Well, localized conflicts, whether that is a physical fight between two gouramis, a stressor in a human immune system, or, a localized supply chain disruption, they often create the initial vulnerability, they create the breach,
Right.
but it is rarely the initial conflict that causes the systemic collapse. It's the secondary issues, the opportunistic infections, the things that rush into the breach once the defenses are down.
Those are the things that take over and cause the visible catastrophic deformity.
Exactly. Ang recognized that the trauma of the fight was merely the catalyst. The microscopic bacteria in the water was the actual mechanism pulling the fish apart.
But, knowing the bacteria bent the spine doesn't actually save the fish.
No, it doesn't.
Identifying the mechanism of injury just highlights how desperate the situation actually is. Ang has a patient that can no longer swim.
Which is a death sentence.
Yeah, a fish that can't swim, can't eat, it can't compete for resources, and in an outdoor pond, it is utterly defenseless against predators. The hydrodynamics are totally ruined.
And for this specific species, an inability to swim isn't just a mobility issue, it is literally a suffocation issue.
Wait, really? Because they have that special organ, right?
Yes. Gouramis belong to a suborder of fish called Anabantoidae. They possess a highly specialized respiratory organ called a labyrinth organ, which is located just above their gills.
This is a crucial piece of evolutionary biology for this scenario. They evolved this organ to survive in, shallow, stagnant, low-oxygen waters like rice paddies or warm, slow-moving streams.
Right. Because the water they naturally inhabit holds very little dissolved oxygen, their gills just aren't enough to sustain them.
So they have to surface.
They absolutely must visit the surface of the water to gulp atmospheric air, which is then processed by that labyrinth organ. If a gourami cannot reach the surface, it will literally drown.
A fish drowning in water. That's so grim.
It is.
So the bent spine is a ticking clock. If this fish tries to swim to the surface to breathe, its ruined hydrodynamics mean it will likely just spin in circles.
You won't get any lift.
Yeah, it will exhaust itself trying to fight gravity and water pressure, burning through the crucial caloric energy it desperately needs to fight the bacterial infection in the first place.
And eventually it will just drown in its own pond.
So how do you treat a drowning aquatic patient when you can't, manually unbend its spine?
Ang details an incredibly practical solution. They move the injured fish to the top area of the basket container inside the pond.
Right.
Ang specifically notes that this spot provides a shallow space, which serves as a resting area for the fish.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because Ang's solution is essentially architectural medicine.
Oh, I like that term.
By placing the fish in a shallow container near the surface, Ang has constructed the aquatic equivalent of a zero-gravity rehabilitation pool.
That's exactly what it is.
Let's look at the physics of this space. The shallow water uses surface tension and a physical floor that is only inches below the waterline to act as a crutch for the fish.
The environment does all the heavy lifting. The fish doesn't have to fight the water column to stay upright anymore.
It doesn't have to expend massive amounts of energy to reach the surface to use its labyrinth organ.
No, because the oxygen is mere millimeters away, and the plastic floor of the basket physically supports the weight of its bent spine.
Ang has basically manipulated the physical architecture of the pond to completely remove the need for the fish to expend energy on mobility.
Yes.
By solving the mechanical problem of swimming, Ang allows 100% of the fish's metabolic energy to go toward fighting the bacterial infection and healing that necrotic muscle tissue.
It is a brilliant piece of environmental design used for medical triage, but honestly, the final sentence of Ang's protocol is perhaps the most telling part of the whole entry.
What was it again?
After setting up this makeshift ICU, Ang writes, "There is not much we can do except keep it well fed and monitor it."
That line is so stark.
Right.
After diagnosing the cascade of failures, after engineering a specialized recovery zone, the final step is just stopping.
It is cold, hard pragmatism. In crisis management, the instinct is almost always to over-intervene.
Oh, for sure. If a project is failing, managers schedule endless meetings.
If a crop is struggling, we dump more fertilizer on it. If an animal is sick, the urge is to handle the patient, adjust the water chemistry endlessly, or flood the system with broad-spectrum medications.
Medications that might just crash the pond's nitrogen cycle anyway.
Exactly. Aang demonstrates the disciplined approach of a veteran who understands the absolute boundaries of their own agency.
Because you can't reach in and physically straighten a fish's spine.
You cannot. You can only manipulate the variables within your control. Aang provided a physically supportive environment. They ensured the basic biological needs, easy access to oxygen and food, were met without requiring the patient to expend energy.
And then they just step back.
They stepped back. They accepted that the actual healing process is entirely up to the fish's biology now. The most difficult discipline in managing any complex system is creating the optimal conditions for recovery and then practicing the agonizing patience of simply watching.
It is a striking level of acceptance. There's no panic, no frantic adjustments to the water chemistry, just steady, quiet support. And then the journal entry signs off. Till the next post. Yours truly, Aang.
Very casual.
It implies this entire ordeal is just one of many small dramas woven into the daily life of managing these ponds.
It proves that deep insights into biology and systems management don't require sprawling academic papers. Sometimes they are hidden in a 150-word blog post about a backyard hobby.
We've traced a remarkable path today, based on a tiny snippet from August 2026. I mean, we started with the danger of a simple visual assumption misjudging the sex of a fish.
Right.
And we watched how that single error in a closed system sparked a territorial war. We unraveled the deductive reasoning required to diagnose a bent spine, tracing the causality from physical trauma to an opportunistic bacterial infection seizing the muscle tissue.
And finally, we looked at the pragmatic ingenuity of using shallow water physics to save a labyrinth fish from drowning.
Capped off by the discipline of knowing when to stop interfering.
It's a masterclass in observing the cascading consequences of our actions and recognizing exactly where our ability to fix a problem ends and nature's process begins.
So what does this all mean? It means that every variable we introduce into an established system, no matter how confident we are in our assumptions, carries the potential for massive disruption.
Very true.
And it means that sometimes the most effective way to help a broken system heal is to build a supportive structure around it, provide the basic resources, and get out of the way.
You know, before we wrap up, there is a final lingering question worth thinking about.
Let's hear it.
We've just analyzed how Aang, who is a highly seasoned caretaker managing complex, multi-pond systems over hundreds of journal entries, was entirely upended by the unpredictable nature of a single biological interaction.
Yeah.
If someone with that level of specific, localized expertise can have their controlled environment thrown into chaos by one wrong assumption about a newcomer, what does that tell us about our human attempts to predict and manage the much larger, infinitely more complex ecosystems and social structures we operate in every single day?
Wow. That is a lot to chew on for you listeners out there.
Yeah.
We appreciate you joining us to unpack this tiny, surprisingly dramatic corner of the internet today. Until next time.